It's the Pacers, it's the Bucks, it's the playoffs, and it's coming very soon. And I have a lot of questions about the series, including Giannis, the Pacers' depth, strategy, and so much more that we'll get to on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, let's talk some playoffs. The play-in tournament is off and running. What a night of first games. The Warriors and the Magic, welcome to the playoff field. The Pacers kick off their series and the entire playoffs on Saturday at 1. I said noon yesterday because I'm stupid, and it's going to be awesome. And I have a ton of questions about the series because last year, the Bucks were different in many ways, and obviously there's this Giannis Dame factor that's way different, which star is missing. But there's way more to it than that. Even though the Pacers have such a similar team, I have a lot of very different questions about how this series will go. I was asking guys that at practice all Tuesday. What do you think's different about the Bucks besides Giannis, obviously? And we'll talk about a lot of questions I have that I think will define this series today. The entire schedule is out for the series. I tweeted it out if you want to see it, and it's on Blue Sky. Game 1 is Saturday at 1. Game 2 is Tuesday the 22nd at 7. Game 3 is Friday the 25th at 8, and Game 4 would be Sunday the 27th at 9:30. We won't do the rest because that's boring podcasting, but you can find it all there. Okay, my first big question about this series and about the Bucks specifically, especially compared to last year, is zone defense, right? How much can this actually be a weapon for the Milwaukee Bucks in this series? And I go back to that game the Pacers and Bucks played in December of last year, New Year's Eve. Pacers were up 18 in the second half. I believe that was their biggest lead. And it felt like they were about to have a stretch where if they just outscored the Bucks for a few more minutes, the Bucks would fold. The Pacers' biggest lead was 19 in the third quarter. Instead, the Bucks hit hard. They had it down to a 2-point game by the end of that quarter, and then they won by 8 in a rough second half for the Pacers. And a big part of that half, or that game in general, the Pacers scored 48 points in the second half, and the Bucks scored 67, right? And the zone defense the Bucks played was very threatening in that game. They had Chris Middleton at the time and Dame, and they started Andre Jackson, right? It's like a different roster literally than them. They have then. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Regardless, that zone with Giannis, Lopez, Andre Jackson, Prince, whoever's out there is very tough for the Bucks. And that has been a problem for the Pacers all season, is they've had a few games where they're okay against zone, but a lot of times for some reason, it just cooks up the Pacers so much, and they get out of what they're doing, or they're thinking too much, or they get too reliant on like one guy, and like they know what to do. They plant someone in the middle, but they just overthink it. They're too slow. It doesn't work. And then the other problem is, especially against a team like the Bucks, if they can't get stops, which in that second half against Milwaukee, another part of that was Giannis hitting a million mid-range shots. And boy, will we talk about Giannis later in this episode. You know, if all that's happening in tandem, the Bucks are scoring and they can set their zone, it just gets into the Pacers snowball of the season, as I've called it a few times, where basket, set your defense, zone defense gets a stop, makes it easy to score, so you can set your zone defense again, and it just keeps happening over and over. Is this actually going to be possible in the playoffs, right, for the Bucks to do that? Because the Pacers saw zone defenses from their opponents, according to Synergy, third most of any team, right? Only OKC and Orlando saw more zone. One team that sucks at shooting, one team that is just everyone's trying anything to stop the Thunder. And a lot of times what teams will do against the Pacers is they will go zone against the bench, right? TJ McConnell groups or McConnell Mathurin groups, because those groups aren't as good at shooting as when Haliburton's on the floor, especially when Haliburton's on the floor with other shooting. And that makes sense why other teams do that. And sometimes McConnell's groups can do well against those and sometimes not. Whatever, like that I expect. I bet those groups see zone in the playoffs. The Bucks in that game that I'm talking about went zone against the starters, right? And so on one hand, there will be less bench in the playoffs, right? Maybe that means the Pacers will see less zone. On the other hand, the fact that the Bucks were willing to use it against starters is very telling. They used zone, the 6th most of any team this year. The Pacers were 22nd in points per possession versus zone. And while the Bucks had a high volume of zone defense, they were just kind of when it came to points allowed. It's not like they were the greatest zone defense team ever, but I think that is going to be a huge question to me in this series. Last year, the Bucks had a lot of trouble stopping the Pacers after game 1, especially. If they have something they can fall back into, like 10% of their trips, is that going to be enough to disrupt the Pacers to a point that they can get close to them when it comes to a per possession efficiency on offense? I don't know that, but I think that the bench concerns, which is coming in just a second as a question, means that it is certainly worth monitoring. If the Bucks zone just gooks up the Pacers, disrupts their flow regardless of who's on the floor, even if it's starting fives, that's going to be a big deal, even if the Pacers are using their bench less. I am very curious how much zone defense shifts what this series will look like. Question 2 I have about Pacers Bucks. What do the Pacers do if their bench isn't good enough? Right? Last year, somehow contrary to belief, like people forgot how this series actually happened. The Pacers only played 8 guys more than 24 minutes the whole series. Not per game, the whole series against the Bucks. Only 8 guys played more than 24 total minutes. That's 4 minutes per game for everybody but 8. They went to 8. People are like, oh, they played 9 in the playoffs. They used their depth. They did against the Knicks. They tried to against Boston, then had some injuries. They only played 8 against the Bucks. It was the starters, and it was Ben Shepherd, and it was TJ McConnell, and it was Obi Toppin. That's it. They tried Jalen Smith in game 1. It didn't work. Isaiah Jackson played a little bit. Doug McDermott played too much for some reason, a little bit, and that was it. And that was fine. I'm not even saying that was wrong. In fact, I think that 8's probably going to be the number they land on this year in the postseason too. Part of that was possible because the Bucks used that front court combo of Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis without another player, without a center behind that group, meaning it was easy for the Pacers to go top on at the 5 because Portis is a big player, but he's not like a center-sized dude. You can get away with a 4 against him and not be freaked out. And they still don't really have a backup 5. They have Jericho Sims now. I don't think he's going to play enough that it changes the Pacers strategy there. So the Pacers might just play 8 again. That's fine to me. I have a question about that. I do have a question about the effectiveness of the 8 guys, assuming it's McConnell, Mathurin, and Toppin, right? I think they all can be good. They've all had good moments against different teams here and there this season, but that bench was awesome last year. A huge weapon for the Pacers, even in the postseason. That has just simply not been true this year. If for example, if the bench isn't good enough for the Pacers this year in the playoffs compared to last year, if it's McConnell, who's the reason for that, right? If he's really struggling, he can't get to his spots, he can't get off his shot. Can Nembhard play the backup 1? Yeah, maybe. But then who replaces those minutes? Jarris Walker being guy number 8. He might be interesting in this series. I think his size could matter against these small ball but big Bucks groups, but he's very inexperienced. You kind of have no idea what you're going to get from him. And we're about to talk about Jarris Walker a lot because if Obi Toppin's not good enough, what do you do? Thomas Bryant? Jarris Walker there too, right? That's tough because then they're putting a ton on Turner and Siakam, or maybe Thomas Bryant has to make his threes or guard, right? Maybe that's also Jarris. If it's Ben Mathurin who's struggling and making the bench not connect or be good enough, that seems like also a Jarris Walker answer. Maybe that relies you more on injured Nembhard or Aaron Nesmith, though. Like, they're just, yes, the solution is often Jarris Walker, or I guess Ben Shepherd, who was good in the playoffs last year. I would think it'd be Jarris right now. Regardless, that's a lot to put on a rookie, or it's a lot of strain to put on the rest of your starters. If you're going to rely on the rookie, and they don't have the answers they had last year, right, where they had competent centers, more competent centers. You know, I think Thomas Bryant could have a role in certain matchups in the playoffs. They'll have to play if they play the Cavs, for example. But in this series specifically, like without a Jackson, without a Sticks, you know, that's a harder button to push to me. You know, if Ben Shepherd continues to not make shots, that's a hard button to push. Jarris Walker, we have no idea in the playoffs what that's going to look like. And I can talk about Ben Shepherd being proven in the playoffs last year, but he struggled so much recently that if they switch to Jarris, I think that'd be the right choice. But then you're throwing out someone else's playoff or regular season record. They're just kind of in a pickle, and I have no idea what they're going to do if their bench isn't good enough. Yes, they can rely on their starters forever. That's what every team wants to do in the playoffs, but also, like, the Pacers were very proud last year that their depth was very helpful all season in the playoffs. And then everybody talked about how great it was that they were healthy and their opponents weren't. Well, guess what? That was part of it. They could stretch out their depth and not rely on their starters as much, and that was all great. I don't know what they're going to do if they're not getting enough from their bench. Obviously, the answer is mix and match in different ways or unique ways, or just figure something out that way. I talked about how I think Andrew Nembhard should be with more bench groups if that's how they do that. Siakam's going to have to play with those bench groups like he did all season if they're going to do that. That's all great. I think I know what the generic answer is going to be for the Pacers, but they have so many specific situations of guys that, could struggle and put them in a pickle that I am very curious how the Pacers would handle their bench in the playoffs. Let's take some closer looks at the Bucks. Kevin Porter Jr., that's a new wrinkle in the series. Giannis and the Bucks bench and a lot of other intangible things we got to get to from Pacers Bucks. Before we do any of that, we got to talk about two great groups of people. First up, Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about it. When was the last time you had a service emergency? If the person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone's the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications all through an app on your phone or computer. Many love they don't have to carry two phones. With Open Phone, they can manage business calls and texts from one app, whether they're at their desk or on the go. Their favorite feature, the shared inbox. Your team can jump into any conversation without missing a beat. And the AI call transcripts and summaries save you time on follow-ups and ensures you never lose track of customer interaction. Open Phone is offering listeners here today 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you're switching from another service, Open Phone will port your existing numbers over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Let's also talk about Amazon and their Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV could be on an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Endless entertainment. They have 4K streaming. Watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. It's affordable and portable gaming as well. Got to check it out yourself. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Lockdown to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and the 3rd generation Fire TV Cube. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, Locked On NBA, because Wes Goldberg and I host Tuesday night. We got to talk about the playing games, or Locked On Magic or Locked On Warriors. They're moving on. They're in the field. The Magic, congrats, you get to play the Celtics. The Warriors, congrats, you can battle the Rockets. That doesn't sound very fun. I think a lot of people will pick the Warriors. I'm going to pick the Rockets. Let's talk more Pacers Bucks. Let's focus on the Bucks for some questions here. Kevin Porter Jr. has been really good of late for the Bucks as a scorer, as an actual guy who puts pressure on the rim, something the Bucks were lacking. Last year, think back to last year's Pacers-Bucks series. Dame averaged over 30 points a game. Chris Middleton, I think most people who watch that series would say was the Bucks' best player, at least most consistent performer. They were great. Brook Lopez was a tough matchup at times. I think that's going to be the case again this year. But man, were their perimeter guys tough, right? Not a lot of rim pressure, if any, from Malik Beasley or Patrick Beverley or AJ Green, or I think I'm missing one guy. Like, they didn't have a lot there. If Kevin Porter Jr. can actually get rolling both towards the basket and just kind of cook as a scorer like he was late in the season, the Pacers are going to have to guard their tails off. Like, that is a big change in how the Bucks play and what they look like. And I have a lot more to talk about with him and the Bucks, but that's just a totally new dimension that was kind of lacking. Obviously, Dame had some of it, but from last year, that's going to be a big change. Is someone else who can be that kind of threat. And again, it was somewhat Dame last year. You might be laughing that I'm saying this, but he's been good for the Bucks of late. And he might actually, and I think he's going to be, a stressor for the Pacers defense. They're going to have to find a way to contain him. The Bucks recently, actually since they got him, plus 22.5 net rating with Giannis and Kevin Porter Jr. on the floor. That's insane. They have an unsustainable defensive rating, but wow, I mean, that's crazy. And their offense has been deservedly that good and like pretty normal ways that they could just replicate over and over. They have Giannis and a guy who can attack the basket. You put shooters around that. Great. That's a good lineup. I think that is going to be the biggest change in personnel that the Bucks have from last year. They have other differences, obviously. You could say that Middleton out for Kuzma is the bigger change. I think that that's obviously a downgrade for the Bucks, and that's possible that downgrade is bigger than this, but I think Kevin Porter Jr. is going to cause a lot of problems. And what I don't mean by personnel changes like Dame being out instead of Giannis. Like, that's different. They're still on the team. By the way, Dame confirmed out for game 1. I think it was start of the series was the reporting from Shams. We'll see. Look, here's what I'm going to say about this. I'm going to say this right now, and I'm not going to say it again. Last year, the Bucks said, yeah, Giannis is progressing. We'll see. Maybe he'll play this time. Maybe he'll play this time. And I kept talking about it and what it meant for the series, and then he just never returned. And then they said Chris Middleton's going to be ready by opening night, and then he wasn't ready till like December. Like, I'm just going to say the Bucks say he's ramping up. I don't know when he's returning, and that's it. And I'm not talking about Dame anymore. He's going to miss time. That's huge for the Pacers, obviously. Kevin Porter Jr. is really good, and him and Giannis together have been really good, but they haven't been good in the minutes with him and no Giannis. So if he's not awesome, that means the Pacers are going to have a good time getting some stops in the outside of the Giannis plus shooters groups that have been so good. But if he's really good, the Pacers are going to have some stressors on their defense, especially if he's good when Giannis is not on the floor. And so I have big questions about how good and effective he can be on this stage and in this setting, and specifically lifting the team without Giannis. But if they're together and the Bucks are just booming, more Bucks Giannis lineup stuff. The Bucks bench. They've been doing this thing recently. They've been closing games with this group. They have a starting 5 with other players. Giannis and AJ Green, Kevin Porter Jr., and Gary Trent has been like amazing. That group is plus 93 in 111 minutes, regardless of who the 5th player is. That's crazy good. That's very effective. And that's basically Giannis plus shooters. You can put Taurean Prince in there, but you could also put a big in there if you wanted. Right? They just have a lot of looks to go with it, and it's so spread out that it's such an effective offensive group. It's hard to guard Giannis and guard all those shooters at the same time if they can go uber small. So what are the Pacers' answer going to be to that group? Right? No one figured it out down the stretch of this season. I've said this story so many times. Every time I'm going to go check the Bucks game out. The Bucks are on Central Time, right? They play their games start an hour after the Pacers a lot. Okay, the Pacers game's over. I want to go check on the Bucks, see what's going on, see how the standings will change for the Pacers. And they're closing games with this group. And I'm like, oh, well, it's a close game late. It could go either way. And then Kevin Porter was awesome, and Gary Trent made a big 3, and AJ Green made a big play, and they won. It's like, man, this group is really good. Really, really good. So what do the Pacers do? What is their answer to the Giannis plus the bench group? Because that is a new thing, obviously, the Giannis part of it, but just a new thing from last year in general. Do they go small and try to make it a shootout? Yeah, their offense is good enough to do that, but you might just be hemorrhaging points the whole time. Do you try to find a group that can be big enough or connected enough on defense to make those shooters have a tough time? Good luck stopping Giannis. We'll talk about that in the next segment. I just don't know what that's going to look like. And I think that is going to be a very, very stressful lineup for the Pacers to guard in general. And if it's bench players on the floor, the Pacers will often not have their full starting group out there. And I think that's going to be somewhere where they get stressed out a lot. And it's going to test the way they guard Giannis, but it's also going to test their entire connectivity, especially if they go Prince for an uber small group. So that's a lot of Giannis stuff related to their bench players, Kevin Porter Jr. and the shooters. But I think that that's a big question for me in the series. If they can find answers with that group, the Bucks, that's going to be a lot of toughness for the Pacers. And that leads to like the biggest actual question of the series that I've put off for too long. Giannis is playing. Last year he did not. Dame and Chris Middleton did. Dame and Chris Middleton will not be early in the series, at least, maybe the whole time. Giannis will. What is the plan for the Pacers here, right? And how are you actually doing it? Because you can't just guard him one-on-one, and no one person makes the most sense. And like Aaron Nesmith can play him tough, and Pascal Siakam's tall, and Myles Turner can hit him, I guess. They have like defenders of size. Obi Toppin's tall, but it's a tough matchup for him. Jarris is stocky. No one can guard him. They have a lot of guys who will present him size challenges, though. And last year we saw the Pacers do well against the Bucks and Giannis. They beat him 4 times and then beat him in the playoffs. Like, they've shown a plan that makes sense. In April, Giannis averaged a triple-double. The passing is his new improved thing. And that's why I think they should be very, very scared of Giannis. Because that's a small sample, but it should give everybody pause about his passing. Last year, the Pacers did better than some other teams outside of the 60-whatever point game for Giannis at guarding the Greek Freak because they sent the wall, right? He'd get to the elbow. There's a guy on his right. There's a guy on his left. There's a guy in front of him. He can't just drive through it. He's going to run into 2 dudes. And he claimed after one of the games in Indy that the Pacers won, he said, I'm pass first. I see that. I try to move the ball. I try to get my teammates involved. And I don't consider Giannis pass first myself, but if he considers himself pass first, great, then he's pass first. That's fine. He knows himself better than me. But his passing's been awesome of late. Both when he sees extra attention, he gets off it and gets it to the right guy. And just in general, his read of the game, the attention he draws has made him a better passer. If he's actually knocking those passes around and he's hitting that mid-ranger like he did in the game that the Pacers lost in late December, good freaking luck. Like, what are the Pacers supposed to do? If they send three and he can just turn around and shoot over it, they're screwed. If they send three, if he finds the open man, they're screwed. There's just a lot of challenges to guarding him, and he can go for 40 at any time, right? I'm very curious to what the Pacers' plan is against this guy and how they're going to do it. Do they send him coverage you've seen before? I think the answer, like Tom Thibodeau hinted at this when talking about how the Knicks will defend Cade or try to defend Cade, you have to send different looks at those guys throughout a game. You can't just do the same thing over and over. They'll figure it out. And you can't just pray shooters miss. At some point they won't. You have to just mix it up. Who's on them, how they're doing it, the timing of it. Like, that all has to be mixed up. That, to me, is going to be key. How much can the Pacers mix things up without breaking down while defending Giannis? If they mix it up and they get it wrong and then the Bucks just easily score, that's not worth it. If they can't mix it up for whatever reason, because guys will mess it up or they just can't do it, they're screwed. He'll just figure it out and they'll score. They have to find a way to make life hard on Giannis. He's a two-time MVP and a champion for a reason. That's not very easy. He's the best player in the East left. That's not easy. But I'm very curious how the Pacers will do it. Again, he can go for 40 any time. He averaged 10 assists, over 10 assists per game in April. It's going to be crazy hard for the Pacers to deal with him. So here's something I've heard a lot recently that I want to address really quick. You know, there's always this discussion with like star players or role players or however you want to parse it out of, oh, well, who cares about Giannis? Let him get his 50. Just make sure Gary Trent doesn't score. Make sure all the like, okay, that sounds cool. Like in practice, it's just not like possible. It's not ever been a thing. You can't do it. I hate that as an idea because if Giannis scores 40, the Bucks win 80% of their games. That's just what happened in the regular season. They were well over 500, but he scored 30 plus, right? That you can't just do that. Like, one, the rest of the Bucks players are too good to just be like, we're going to stop them completely. Like, you can't just do that. And if he's scoring that many points, like you're taking the ball out of the net all the time, it's going to be hard to get your offense rolling. I think he's going to score 40 points multiple times in the series just because he's awesome, not because the Pacers are like, yeah, that's fine. We'll single cover him and stop everybody else. Like, that doesn't make sense to me as a strategy. It's never worked. And like, they're going to have to do well rotating and closing out to shooters and not get killed by Kyle Korver like they did against the Cavs in 2018. And this is all very much easier said than done. Obviously, everything is. But I think that it'd be very foolish to be like, oh, let Giannis get his 50. We'll shut down everybody else. That doesn't make sense to me as a strategy. They've seen the wall be decent. They're going to have to try that, but they're going to have to mix it up. They're going to need to be on their A game. They're going to have to hope he misses some of those turnaround middies or that his teammates miss shots at some point. And the Pacers can create really good shots too. I'm not saying all this to say like the Bucks are this unsolvable team. Like, I'm going to pick the Pacers to win the series. But these are just questions I have about how the Pacers are going to play. A couple more questions. They're all about intangibles, home court advantage, experience, all that kind of stuff. To close out today's Locked On Pacers. Before we do any of that, let's talk about SKIMS. When I found out SKIMS was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family. Had to give it a try, and it lives up to the hype. Many people, including myself, have had issues with underwear for forever. The fit, the comfort, or just finding the right style can be challenging. SKIMS changes all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone. The boxer briefs and the classic briefs, they're all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style, like their 3-inch stretch boxer brief. Good for traveling. You know, no one likes it when their boxer briefs ride up, bother you in the cheeks. Well, if you're traveling a lot, these are the thing for you. They stay in position all day. They never ride up. They never lose their shape. All other 3-inch boxer briefs. Put on notice. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and SKIMS stores. Let them know we sent you after you place your order. Select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen should be Locked On Bucks. They'll tell you about the Dame latest. There was an update on him from the Bucks officially on Tuesday and how they feel about the Pacers and what's different to them. And tomorrow, you'll get a crossover. Woo! Myself, Camille, and Justin from Locked On Bucks all looking ahead at this series. All we do is just crossover podcast together because these teams are going to play each other like 25 times across 2 seasons. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait to record that one and talk about all the differences from last year's series to this year's because Pacers have a very similar roster, but are in a different spot. The Bucks have a different roster and are kind of in a similar spot, and that leads to very different things for this series. Let's talk about a few more things that are intriguing to me in this series. One, how much is home court advantage going to matter for the Pacers? I don't know. Both 7 seeds just won at home tonight, for example. Last year, I think home court advantage is a big deal for the Pacers. They did not lose a home game until Tyrese Haliburton got hurt. They did not lose a home game until they played Boston in the conference finals. They won every home game they played against the Bucks in the playoffs last year. They won every home game they played against the Knicks. It's a big deal, right? You talk about fans, that's certainly a big part of it, but sleeping in your own bed and knowing the traffic patterns and being more comfortable in the set scenarios and all your resources, they're like, it's just better for the home team, and the Pacers have that advantage. That's great. Does that actually help them start a series better? They got hammered by the Bucks in game 1 last year. They did not get hammered by the Knicks or Celtics in game 1, but they did not win a single game 1 in the playoffs last year, right? Can they use that to their advantage? Are they actually going to get off to a better start this year and make home court, get them on that right foot? I said this before every series last year. Game 1 is, I think, one of the 2 most important games in a series because you're setting the tone, and usually the winner forces the other team to make the first adjustments, or at least more dramatic adjustments because they're losing and they need it more. And so getting off on the right foot is so important. How do the Pacers handle having home court advantage with this group? Again, they didn't win a game 1 last year. So what's going to give? Are they going to win a game 1 at home, or are they going to stink starting series and give away home court advantage that fast? I'm very curious about that. I'm also very curious how experience changes what the Pacers look like, right? This time last year, literally a year ago to the day, they were just this young team with Tyrese Haliburton never played in the playoffs and Ben Shepherd's never played in the playoffs, and a lot of their guys haven't won that many. Myles Turner had never been out of the first round, and Aaron Nesmith hadn't played in meaningful playoff minutes. He obviously played with the Celtics some. Andrew Nembhard's first playoffs, McConnell's first time winning a round, I believe. He might have won once with Philly. You can go on and on. Isaiah Jackson and his first time winning a series, right? His first playoffs at all. They now have a lot of guys with experience. Bennedict Mathurin does not. Johnny Furphy does not. A couple other things mixed in here and there. But they have another champ in Thomas Bryant and Siakam. Like, the whole team has experience now, largely. Their whole rotation does, all together. How much does that help them with approach and help them with managing their emotions this week? How much did that play to their weakness last year in game 1 in Milwaukee? I think it was a halftime interview with Jenny Busick. It might have been a different coach talking about, like, yeah, we were playing, we're playing like a team, like, not ready for that. It might have been Lloyd Pierce. I think it was Lloyd Pierce, actually. Like, he said that, like, playing young and not ready. They were bad in game 1 in Milwaukee last year. How much will experience help them in the playoffs this year? Because that could be something that is a big deal. They were a little inconsistent last year in the playoffs. If they can streamline some of that because of experience, that'd be a big deal. Okay, here's a question I'm just going to vaguely ask, and then I would like input on this from other people at some point. How much is Ben Mathurin actually going to play? I ask that because I think he's going to be an important player. I think his game, in theory, fits a playoff setting better, even though I've already questioned is that actually true on the Pacers part of this? If Aaron Nesmith keeps making shots and keeps defending at Aaron Nesmith levels of defense, how are they going to take Nesmith off the floor? Right? He's going to play 35 to 40 minutes, and they obviously play Nembhard all the time because of his defense, although maybe Nembhard, if he can't make shots, will play less. But if Nembhard and Nesmith are both playing a lot, it kind of feels like Mathurin's minutes are capped in like the teens to low 20s, and maybe that's enough to get a good vibe of what he does. But and don't get me wrong, I'm very excited to see Bennedict Mathurin in the playoffs. I think he can do very well in this setting. I've already talked about that. The more I think about it, the more I'm wondering, how much is he actually going to play, right? Because the Pacers can, even though it's important to figure out how good he is in the playoffs, they need to prioritize the winning over just tossing him onto the floor. These, to me, are the big questions will that define this playoffs or this series. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be an absolute blast. It's going to be much different than last year. I will go into it a little more tomorrow when we cross it over with the Pacers and the Bucks Locked On shows. But I'm going to be picking Pacers in 7. I think they are the better team. I think they have stylistic advantages. And with experience and home court advantage, they get that slight edge even against the best team in the East. We'll get into more of, or the best team, the best player in the East. So you'll get more detail on all that tomorrow when we talk with Camille and Justin. Looking forward to that. We'll surely be catching up with them in the middle of the series too, because there's lots of 2-day gaps between games. Thursday, we'll have a Pacers specific guest to talk about the Pacers big X Factory things for this playoffs. Friday, just me ahead of game 1, and then off and running for Pacers Bucks. I can't wait. I'm in such a playoff mood after the play-in games. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony R. East if you want to yell at me for saying something dumb. Got a lot of tweets yesterday after the award show. So if you want to disagree with me or laugh at me for using inconsistent logic by using numbers to pick one guy, not another, great, do that. And this Twitter account for this podcast is at Locked On Pacers. Thank you all so much for listening. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We will see you very soon.